Zach, I want to officially introduce to you, Nick Winkelman, who is someone that I consider a friend. But, it's funny, is I met Nick. Nick, I want to say I probably met you about 12, 13 years ago, right around the time where I opened Drive 495. Oh, I opened Drive 15 years ago. It was probably right after I opened it. And I went out to API in Tempe, Arizona, and Nick was coaching, if I can recall correctly, the NFL. You were doing a lot of work with the U.S. military, and API was just such at the time, I never really saw anything like that. It was like a Shangri-La for athletes.
It's now EXOS?
It's now EXOS.
Okay.
But it was a place where an athlete would show up and they'd get overhauled, nutrition, recovery, physical therapy, strength and conditioning. And Nick
I think and tell me if I'm wrong, Nick, but I read, were you 19 when you were introduced to that place?
Yeah, so I met this guy named Guido. He was like this crazy Belgian guy who turned out to be a mentor and now an incredible friend. And he was working at Oregon State University, but he knew Mark Verstegen back when he was at IPI and voluntary, and he kind of pulled out this trifold when I was 19, just this young S&C or aspiring S&C student. And he said, listen, if you want to be the best, man, this is the guy you got to go work with. So that was my first exposure, right around 19.
That's pretty cool to get on the ground floor of something that ends up blowing up.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, in 2006, when I went to Athletes Performance, Verstegen had already had the Sports Illustrated article with Nomar Garcia-Parra. He had a number of other clients that I think really backed him. And he had just started, the NFL Combine development. So the early signs of success were there.
You went on this run with Verstegen, API, EXOS. Now you're 2016, you go to the Irish Rugby Football Union, and you're working in Ireland.
Can I back up for one second?
Yes, please.
What makes you decide to take that job?
Yes.
I'm sure you had plenty of opportunities.
Part of it is chance. It is being in the right place at the right time. At the time, I had worked for EXOS for 10 years. And in all honesty, I had literally done just about every job you can there. So by that time, I started to get the sense that, I think AP has added as much to me as they can right now. And I feel I've added as much to them as I can. When I started to get that feeling that I'm ready for a new challenge, my wife and I had talked about, our kids are young. Let's try to go find something, do something crazy and get out of the country. And then for me, get out of the sport that I was used to. And ultimately, I looked in Australia, I looked in Germany, the UK, I looked everywhere. I did not have any rules outside of the fact that I wanted to find a place that could add value to me, could challenge me, but also a place where I thought I had the tools to add something to them.
You said it was different and challenging, and I want you to open up and try and obviously be honest here, but everyone always talks about how, the U.S. is the best when it comes to strength and conditioning. And no, seriously, was that the case when you showed up there? Was it almost a new system, a new concept that you were bringing in, or were you actually blown away by how much they knew or maybe exceeded what we're doing over here?
I get to Irish Rugby and our facilities are humble. It's not like we're dealing with the kind of salaries and financial backing and economy of scale, if you would, in the NFL, the NBA, but even Premier League soccer that you see just across the water in the UK. So when you walk in, you weren't necessarily blown away as you might be in a Division I type gym or an NFL type gym or even an NBA type gym. But as I started to get to know the professionals, I was absolutely I was blown away by them, because even though they didn't have extravagance from equipment perspective, where they had dedicated their time is in understanding the science, understanding how to manage players insofar as how much should they be running, how much load in the gym should they be doing. So the application of sports science and theory and the use of data to manage the players, I thought was second to none.
When you first got there was less emphasis on technology, so you had to just do things differently, and was there just too much emphasis on technology before? Do you know what I mean?
No, I think actually the technology that was being used in the facilities was probably more progressive than a lot of facilities at the time, even in the U.S.
Do you guys use anything to measure? And I completely understand if you can't disclose this, so please. But do you guys use anything to measure daily readiness by your athletes?
I'll give you a day in the life, and this will kind of track
That's
technology.
perfect.
So when we talk about the morning, players walk in and we have a suite of iPads set up. Okay, so on those iPads, they're going to find their face, right? They're going to hit it. And then once they click that, they're going to get two different areas. One is going to be a wellness survey. And we're going to ask about sleep. We're going to ask about fatigue. We're going to ask about soreness. We're going to ask about any stress that's maybe happening outside of sport. So we have about 12 questions that we ask there. And then we're going to go through some physical assessments day in, day out, looking at ankle mobility, looking at hamstring extensibility, looking at groin squeeze, all those kind of things. And so we kind of get those, if you would, subjective and objective assessments. Then the guys maybe go have a bit of breakfast, they get into the gym. From a gym perspective, we use a technology called push. I think a lot of people are familiar with this. So we're utilizing push, which is a sensor that goes on the bar to track not only our loads, but the velocity that we're moving those loads. But we also use their dashboard. So we're centrally collecting all of our strength data, if you would.
Is there something, Don, that you thought that they might be using, or have you heard of push? Have you used it?
It's interesting, and I want to go back and forth with you on this, but Zach and I have been discussing a lot recently about wearables and about heart rate variability and the pros and cons, and how something around your wrist, it's very difficult to be able to get an accurate heart rate or accurate data. But are you guys using heart rate variability in any way, or is it something where you're just, because at the end of the day, everything you're telling me you're doing, in a way, is giving you exactly what these wearables are telling you or claiming that
they're going to give you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that not matter to a lot of people? Like, I don't really care right now about my grip strength, but at the same time,
for him it's about performance.
But for a professional athlete that needs it, it's totally something that I would want to know about.
Nick is about every day is about making sure his athlete as resilient, as fast, as powerful, as strong, as muscular as possible. Like, you need to make sure that your guys are optimal.
We're trying to understand where there is objective data that can provide insights and value. We want to collect that data. We want to integrate it together. We want to tell one story about the player, not just to pull them back, but also to know when we can push them forward. And ultimately, in the world of high performance, that's the balance, and that's the battle when it comes to data science and all this frickin' information that we collect, is how do we use it not only to keep the player safe, but also to know how we can push and develop the player.
I don't want to keep hammering this point, but it comes back to accuracy. How do you know which ones are accurate and which ones aren't? Because we've talked to numerous people. Of course, the CEO of Whoop is going to say, wow, this is super accurate. Everybody should buy one. But then we talk to other experts that are like, yeah, it's getting better, but it's really not that accurate. So how do you know what to trust, and how did you land on push? And what is it that somebody that's not a professional athlete but still wants to better themselves daily and exercise, consistently should get or look to?
So when it comes to a technology that I'm not familiar with, one, I go to the research and say, is there a gold medical grade standard that they can assess this consumer product against? If not, then you know that you're having to take a lot of things at face value with these companies, and you know that they're going to be selling you their narrative as much as they are their product. So the next thing I do is, okay, is there an expert in that space who has better insight and less blind spots around that specific science and the technology trying to give me an indication of it about my body? And in the case there's both evidence and there's experts. And it just so happens in our guy, Brandon Marcello, he checks both of those boxes. So when it comes to sleep and fatigue, he's the person I go to. And so ultimately, I think that's what we're looking at with any technology. One, can you go to Google Scholar? Can you find the baseline papers that actually look at reliability and validity of these devices and technology? If you can't, can you find an expert that can provide you some level of insight and give you some of the pitfalls that could come in what these technologies are trying to do?
What are the typical individuals who are doing GPP training, general physical preparedness, for the listeners who don't understand the abbreviation? What are they missing from their training regimens? What is that 1, 2, 3 ingredients that you see by the common folk that if they just started focusing on a little bit more, they would see a lot more success in their goals?
That's a tough question, because as you said, there's so many different reasons people are out there working out day in, day out. And one recommendation to one might not be the same recommendation to someone else. And I hate to throw the it depends.
It depends, right.
No.
That's a big FU, Nick.
No, it is.
I use it all the time, don't worry.
Let's get back. No, let's get back to your point, though, and let's take a deep look. Say what we will about these technologies' accuracy. Okay, say what we will about the data coming off of these technologies and the way it's going to inform a superior GPP, preparation phase to give me 1 or 2 more percent lean muscle mass than I otherwise would have had. Ultimately, if these technologies are getting me to get into the gym, get more excited about what I'm doing, pay a little bit more attention to my sleep, pay a little bit more attention to my breathing, pay a little bit more attention to my body and my mind, rather than what I'm doing with my body and my mind every single day at work, I applaud that, because the reality is so much of society, unfortunately, is going the other way.
You've answered my question, because a lot of these wearables are talking that they want to optimize. Yet everyone I speak to who signs up and purchases a specific band, they all have the same answer, and it's never about optimization. It's about, oh, well, you know what? I typically would have 2 drinks, but now I'm only having 1 because I know it's going to mess up my HRV or my strain, et cetera. That's not optimization. If you're talking to someone who really wants optimization, they're doing every inkling in their favor to give them the best opportunity to be 100%.
It has to be about behavior, and at the end of the day, especially if your product, if we know that the best risk-based heart rate system, which is the Apple Watch, is still on average 21 to 23 beats off, right? At the end of the day, you cannot be espousing accuracy, right? Yeah. And I got that one from our friend Brandon
Marcel.
You can't be espousing accuracy, but can you be espousing behavior change and how this will specifically nudge certain behavior?
Yeah, but that's 100%. Not going to sell units. That's not going to sell units, right? Not. So they're not going to be like, look, it's kind of accurate, so you should totally maybe buy it. They're going to say, look, this is totally accurate. It's going to make you live better. It's going to optimize you. That's a terrific word. That's a good buzzword, right?
Right.
So I can get, but I think it's about educating people to realize that it's kind of bullshit right now.
But you know what? Sometimes, and I'm sorry that we're getting off of the strength and conditioning talk, but sometimes. It's always, I always get that magic question of, well, how much should I be doing this? And again, my answer is, Nick, it depends. But at the very least, if you take someone who's sitting on the couch 365 days last year, and you get them to break a sweat for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and that's it, they're going to get in better shape. So sometimes I think, but 99% of the country, they don't understand that.
Right.
They're looking at pictures of so-and-so,
Don Saladino.
I'm not going to use myself as an example. Of Rocky climbing up. They're all looking at video of Rocky in the training montage.
Right.
And they're like, unless I'm throwing up or training for 5 hours a day, what's the point?
Yeah.
And the reality is it was a decision that I made. I mean, partially a decision I made with getting on social media was to kind of send that message and try and become a little bit more relatable and tell people it's not always about what Nick's doing with his with the Irish rugby team.
That is very different.
Yes,
we are literally trying to be the best in the world.
Right,
100%.
Like that is the aspiration.
That's optimization.
And we can measure it. Right? There's a scoring system. We can do that. For most people, being the best in the world at whatever it is they're doing is not something that is easy to just measure or materialize. And it's probably the shadow. At the end of the day, they want to feel better, look better. They want to have energy, and they want to feel freaking 10% happier. That's what they want. But they think to do that, Don, you've nailed it. They think to do that, probably based on what both of you were saying, that they need to have the best. They need, just like we want the best car, the best watch, the best clothes, we need the best technology solution. Anything lesser, it's a non-starter. And we all know that's BS.
Before we close out, because I know your book's coming out in April, real quickly, what's next for you? I mean, you've accomplished so much already in the industry. I'm kind of curious to see what's next in your career, because I know this is not all about, work and money for you. This is about feeling challenged, and it's about continuing to work your way up a ladder right now, which I feel like you've been doing very well over the last decade or so. But what's next?
I've been doing a lot of soul searching when it comes to the contribution I want to make. And I'll be honest, for me, a book is a huge milestone, because I like to do things that take a long time, that I commit to with everything I have, and I produce something that is going to be everlasting. And I think a book encapsulates that. So I'll be honest, that's a big milestone, and I'm going to need to take some time to celebrate that, because I have absolutely put everything into this book. and it has brought me to the brink. But I'm doing it not only for myself, but I'm doing it for all those other coaches who are just like me getting into the industry that had all this information on what to do, but so little information on how to do it.
Sure. Can you tell everyone where they can find you, social media, where they can learn more about you?
Absolutely. So it's at Nick Winkelman, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram, and that's my current home. I'll keep all the updates on what I'm doing in the book on there.
I really appreciate this. I know you've been on a crazy schedule. For you to give us your time right now is really special. I'm looking to seeing you at one of the next Perform Better Summits. I know that's not for a while, but in the meantime, if you need anything from Zach and I, you just hit us with an email, and we'll make sure it gets done.
Thank you guys for giving a platform so people can share to make others better.
Well, this was episode 642.
852.
Right,
Perfect.
one or the other. And you can reach us at reps@muscleandfitness.com if you want to email us, reps@muscleandfitness.com.
Zach's handle is at Zraz.
And Don's is at Don Saladino.
Correct. Guys, thank you so much for joining in. If you have any questions, fire them off to us. Trust me, if you don't know who Nick Winkelman is, now you do.
Yeah.
And message him, go check him out. And, it's been a pleasure learning from him over the last decade. So, Nick, thanks again, brother.